today's topic, for our multifamily investor nation talk today, I wanted to talk to you about how to spiderweb your content, especially if you're raising funds for your own group, working with investors, or educating investors. You know, there's a system that you should have in place. Now, this is a 5-part system, as you can see. My little cohort down here is holding up the number 5. We are only going to talk about step number 1 in this system. But let's just talk about, I like opening up with why. Why should we have 5 systems that we need to talk about? Well, having these systems in place will actually help you stay consistent and persistent with your audience and help you close naturally with your lead and your investor base. And when you can combine these 5 systems together, we're going to be talking about them over time with MFIM. This actually supports the entire investor journey, inviting the investor back and again and again and again naturally into your world. So you get to meet them where they're at and take them on an investor journey. As our Director of Investor Relations, Andrew Davis, talks about it, he says investor experience. All right, so let's talk about step 1 in this process, and that is actually, you guys have heard Dan Handford talk about the know, like, and trust triangle. This is actually that first part of that triangle is getting people to know you. And you can't rely that they will actually find you. You have to go find them and invite them into your world on a repeated basis. So I challenge you, create a weekly event that you can invite people to. Okay, I call it the always have something to invite people to offer. Now, I didn't create that. A gentleman named Michael Port created that in his best-selling book, Book Yourself Solid. You guys also might know, depending on how old you are, Michael Port from General Hospital, same person. Anyways, but he has this always have something to invite people to offer, and it can be anything. It can be a podcast, it can be a webinar, it can be a meetup. It doesn't actually have to be weekly, but I challenge you weekly, and I'm going to show you why when I show you the numbers when you start manipulating the content. There's a couple of rules, ground rules. Whatever you do, whatever you create, you must make sure that you do 2 things with it. It has to be educational and entertaining. Your personality has to shine through. You have to provide value, move people from a thought to an action. So you have to educate. And I think the one thing that you need to do, and I think people don't do enough, is that they need to have a call to action at the end of their content. So a lot of people will get out there and they'll be like, oh, goodness, I'm going to put out some free content. People are going to find the value. They're going to like me. And then they'll find my way to my page. You have to tell it. People are so busy these days. You have to tell them exactly what you need them to do and what action you want them to take. Now, there are a couple ground rules, a couple don'ts here. First, don't just jump right into talking about points or tactics. All right. As you notice here, we're laying the ground rule here. We're talking about why you should care about it. And we're talking about what it is before we start showing you how to do it. I think that's a big groundbreaker or a deal breaker that people do with their content. And another deal breaker is maybe you guys have been on webinars or podcast before or training. You get to the end and the person gives you a laundry list of actions to take, right? Do this if you want to meet me here, do that if you want to meet me here, do this if you want to get in a course, do this if you want to hop on a phone call with me, right? You want to make it very streamlined. Whatever it is, your point of content that you're creating in this initial no part of the triangle, that spiderweb lead system is pointing to only one area. And that should be a landing page on your website. And I'm going to show you a good example of that here in a minute. All right. Now, as you go through this content, now you're going to sit down, you're going to think about what it is that you want to create. Is it going to be a podcast? Is it going to be a YouTube video? Are you going to have a meetup? What is it you're going to create? As you think through this, there has to be a good framework for this. Now, I like keeping things incredibly simple, okay? And complexity kills progress, okay? It also kills people's ability to make a decision. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to like a restaurant and then they hand you a menu that's 10 pages long and there's like 50 choices on every page. you can't make a decision. I know I can't. Same thing with your investors, right? You are meeting them in the busy part of the day. You're delivering content. Try to keep it to 10 to 20 minutes. And then if people need to drop off after that, fantastic. Other people can stay on for Q&A, but keep the framework simple. And that is, tell them what you're going to deliver, why they should care about it, not you, why they should care about it and engage with it. And try to make that why, show them the opportunity cost if they chose not to engage with that content or not to take action. And then show them specifically how to do that step by step, okay, as clearly and cleanly as possible. Another point of your structure you want to consider is, kind of mixing it up, right? Don't do the same thing all the time. People are like variety. It's the spice of life. Okay. They also like certainty, right? They want to see the same thing all the time. Maybe the same thing is you in your medium that you choose to show up with, but the spice of life is maybe you do, say like you do a YouTube or a podcast. Maybe one show is just a solo show. Another one you bring guests on. Another one you're teaching. Another one you're moderating a panel, right? You get some sort of spice of life there. And again, we've also touched on the don'ts, but I'm going to reiterate them again here because they are deal killers for a lot of people. In this stage, you're trying to build rapport with a person. Okay, again, it's more important that your personality shows through, your opinions, your beliefs, because that's what people are going to resonate with. They're either going to be drawn to you or repelled. And it's fine if they're not drawn to you during that stage. You're not trying to serve everyone. So make sure you avoid jumping into the tactic. And again, avoid making those multiple call to actions. And then lastly, make sure you have great equipment, great lighting, great sound. Make sure that you are putting in, just a little bit of effort, with your equipment. Now, it's awesome these days. You can have, if you're going to do a video, you can have Zoom. And that costs like $16 a month. You just need to have a laptop, and then maybe you can get a small like clip-on desk lighting kit, which is what I have, to help you with your Zoom lighting, and then a good microphone. That's really all you need in order to get going, either with a Zoom or with a podcast. Now, all right, we've got it. We developed we've got an understanding of what kind of content we're going to create. We've kind of started putting some structure to what that content is going to look like when we deliver it. But how do we actually generate the ideas for the content and then start spider webbing them out? Well, first of all, we need to think about what our investor wants to hear about, and then we need to give that content multiple jobs. So you can take a screenshot of this, because this is kind of the process that I lay out. Set up a group idea session, either like with yourself, with your team, your investor relations team. If you are your team, fantastic. You're talking to your investors, exactly what they want to hear. And just brainstorm the top 52 questions that your investors are asking. Okay. Or the questions, better yet, they should be asking, but aren't. All right. Okay. List top 52. That gives you one a week. Then create your always have something to invite people to offer. Are you going to answer these questions in a YouTube video? Are you going to answer them in a podcast? Are you going to answer them, at a meetup? All right. Now, maybe you don't have the time. Maybe you want to do it every couple of weeks or once a month. Just keep in mind that, the more touches that you're able to create with somebody, the quicker they're going to get to the buy part of your cycle. All right. Now, I like starting with video personally, because if you start with a video, even if you have no intentions of ever publishing the video, you can be far more flexible with the content. And I'll show you how. All right. So if I start with a video, you can do it live in front of a group. You can get some interaction. I'm going to invite you guys right now to start formulating your questions, dump them in the chat. You see how I did that? Keep a record, because if you're doing this on Zoom, you can download that chat. That chat now becomes your next set of questions that you're going to answer for your investors later on. Okay, whoever your audience is. So keep a log of those chats. But I can actually capture all that information right here. I get a lot of statistics. I can see how long people are sticking with me. I can see if they're actually doing something, if I download reports in Zoom, I can see if they're actually watching the screen or doing something else, multitasking. I can see how engaged they are. So I get a lot of data from that if I do it live, but don't feel pressured. If anything, just record it live, because that leads us into steps 5 and on. You can now take that video if you wanted to and post it on YouTube. Now you've created content for the YouTube channel. You have millions and millions of viewers over there. It's amazing. You can also post it on Facebook, okay? Even LinkedIn. You can post that same video in multiple places. You can now edit that video. You can rip the audio out of the video, and now you have audio for a podcast. All right. Now that you've ripped the audio out, you can now send that over to a transcription service and have them create it's going to be a very rough draft of a blog. And when I say very rough draft, how we talk live is very different than how we write. But you'd be amazed. Now you've got all that content now down in written form. You now can, either polish it or hand it off to an assistant to polish it for blog form. You can now take snippets out of that blog and post that on social media. You can create cool little visuals with that. You could even take snippets out of your video and post that on social media as well. And my favorite, you can even rewrite the blog that you already created for your site and for your own internal audience, have it rewritten, and very important that it is completely rewritten, and get that posted on other websites to draw them into your website. Now, if you did all this, okay, created this nice little spider web and did that for a year, you did all these steps, you would have 156 pieces or more of content and 52 pieces written for other websites, leads that are now coming into your website. All right, guys, that is a lot of information. And again, this all originated from one investor question that you were trying to answer, and do that in a live fashion on your Always Have Something to Invite People to offer. All right, now I know you guys are going to have questions, and I'm going to invite you here to do, I'm going to give you one invitation, but 2 ways to get there. You can go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. You can join me there. And there you get, one-stop shop access to an ebook that I have for all of our passive investors. You can also get time on my schedule if you'd like to talk about our open deals. I also put in a QR code here. So if you're a little bit more, if you're on your cell phone, you can just clip the little QR code and you can go right to that landing page. All right, guys. I invite you, go over to the Q&A box, drop in your questions, and I'd love to help you, any way I can with this content. And while you guys are dropping in your questions, don't forget about registering for our Multifamily Investor Nation. Excuse me. Let me stop the share here. Don't forget about registering for our Multifamily Investor Nation convention, utilizing that code webinar WEH100. What questions do you guys have? The QR code's not working. Oh goodness. Okay. Let me so all right, we'll do this. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I tested it yesterday, but something obviously could have happened between yesterday and today. But I put that website that it redirects to in the chat box. What are good places to go or good resources to collect content? Now, really, this is going to be based on what your audience wants. So, good ways to start off are if you're talking to investors, make sure that you're actually, gathering up the questions that they're asking. If you're doing investor phone calls, say for your deals, write down the questions that that they're asking on those phone calls. And the ones that are getting asked repeatedly are probably the ones that I would start with creating content, because now you can direct people to that content and they can study more. Other things that you can do is you can actually send out a survey to your group. And that's a good way to populate some questions. Now, say like you have a list of 1,000 people, maybe 100 people will engage in that survey. But if you ask them to ask you all your questions, and you're doing this on a regular basis, like if you're going to start a survey, I would encourage you to do it on a regular basis, like, once a month or once a quarter, just to kind of populate those questions. Now, there are kind of pros and cons to that. We can maybe do that. See what I'm doing here? I'm actually thinking about, ooh, that is a great webinar for me to do on how to use surveys to create content for your customer base. So I'm going to like pin that for like a later topic. But there are some pros to cons to that we can dive deeper into. Otherwise, you can also go to online forums or to conferences or to other like webinar situations that have similar groups and see what questions they're asking. You can do that. Or probably my favorite is you can actually just do one of your sessions as a Q&A session, an Ask Me Anything session, and invite people to that and see what questions they're asking. And, granted, you will be like, well, I just answered all these questions live. Like, I don't need to do that again. Jot all these questions down. They're in your chat box. You download them, and now you've got a wealth of information that that you can populate, like for weekly webinars or videos or podcasts to come. Should you start building niche content to build a strong community, or go broad and basic to capture more impressions? Okay. So this really depends on what the focus of your business is. But niches are in the riches, or riches are in the niches. I said that backwards. So, the more specific you can be to your audience, the more useful you're going to be to your audience. For me, I generally talk about the passive investor. What is their experience? What is their journey? And I'm thinking in terms of multifamily, hotel, car washes, and self-storage. I get questions all the time about opportunity zones and this, that, and the other. I don't really go there. I might kind of throw one of those out there every once in a while to draw some people in, but I'm really trying to stay focused. And the reason is I want them to know me. I want them to know what we're doing. I want them to like what we're doing. And I want them to trust that we're the expert in what we're doing. So I have to remain very specific to what it is I'm doing within the business, or what we're doing within our business. If we get too broad, now I'm not serving them. I'm not taking them along this journey to becoming an investor. Yeah, it can be, I'm just kind of responding to the chat. It could be considered a long-term approach, but again, start with the end in mind. I know people that have started a podcast just to create impact, and they're just serving, and they just want to talk about everything under the sun. And, hopefully along the way, some people convert, into being an investor with them. Other times I know people have a very specific funnel that they're trying to feed through. And just think about where you are in building your business. Which do you need now? Because this, when you engage in building content like this, and especially start spiderwebbing it, once you get a system in place, it can be very straightforward and streamlined. However, it does take energy, it does take time, it does take a little bit of money. And if it's not serving your end goal, it's going to be harder for you to sustain. So just think about where you are in your business. At some point in time, I think, most people would try to elevate them out of that part of their business and maybe like hand it off to some team members, or hand it off to like assistants to kind of perpetuate it forward. In that case, it becomes very hands-off. Open the doors. But at this time, whenever it's your time, think about what it is you need to get out of your time investment. Let's see here. A couple questions in the QA box. What advice do you have for individuals who are newer to the syndication space? Ooh, that's very general. Robert, I'm not exactly, if you can like give me a little bit more context about that, that'd be fantastic. You have to be consistent and persistent. And if you're starting up a syndication business, you can't think in terms of like what happens in the next 90 days, 6 months. You have to think about, you're in this for at least 2 to 3 years minimum before you need to pass judgment. That would be my one key piece of information. You have to think, with the end in mind and really have like a commitment to this. Can I do training on how to market property to prospect tenants? Not my area of expertise, Martin, but maybe I can pass that question along to our Multifamily Investor Nation team and see if they can come up with something for sure. You guys jump on over in the chat box. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to pull up the page for the next Multifamily Investor Nation topic. That way you guys can see what we are talking about next week. And you guys can get registered there. Give me just a second. All right, there is our topic for next week. All right. Let's see. No other questions are in. I'll hang out for another minute, but guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This has been amazing. I've got a couple of things that are coming in for clarification. Make sure that you are taking a look at our next week's presentation, as well as registering for the Multifamily Investor Convention in June. You will not want to miss that. I unfortunately had to miss part of it because I was sick, and I was so sad about that this year. Let's see. Another question. To add more color, I'm 2 months in and love the content piece. My thinking is to start with blog posts before doing live content. Okay, so Robert, we're talking about if folks are asking many questions in the live format, you don't have the answer, I feel it would hurt credibility. You can do, Robert, if we're talking about the content piece, I would, if you don't feel like your skills are up to par yet to do things live, that's totally fine. But get there as quickly as you can, because people want to see you and they want to interact with you. They want to know who you are. And that might be great for you to kind of start maybe bringing in people with experts so they can help, you get transferred credibility from them. You can always say, hey, I don't have the answer to that question, but I'll certainly find out and get back to you. So there's a myriad of ways that you can get what we call transferred credibility from people. Just keep in mind, where if you're just starting off with a syndication, building your own syndication business, you got to make sure you have a deal for people to go into. So make sure that, this is kind of balanced out with, finding the core part of the business there. How do I feel about short versus long captions on social media? Because I feel like short captions kill engagement and become very stale for better conversions, and long captions seem vice versa. I'm going to interpret that as, do I like long video or short video? I try to mix it up and see what your group engages in, from a corporate training perspective. And that's the area that I come from. If you're trying to teach a skill, people's attention spans are about 7 minutes. YouTube, I think right now is rewarding content that's 15 minutes or less. So you kind of have to figure out how to, capture people's attentions, also play the, the algorithm game is what I'm going to say, for Facebook and YouTube. Personally, I'm okay with longer content, but just know I can see that people drop off after 10 or 15 minutes, probably around the 10, 12 minute mark. So you're going to want to front load, your content for, where can people find out about you, who you are, why they should care about the content, and get into the meat as quickly as you have built that rapport. I see, this isn't the time to be like, oh, I'm going to save all the best for last, and bury it in minute 35 or 40. You can deliver value very quickly up front, and then, get into the narration and the content, much like we're doing here. If I'm watching numbers, which I have been on the YouTube, I've seen a lot of people that dropped off at 20 minutes, they got what they needed out of it. And not a lot of people are staying here for kind of the Q&A section. So just give that some sort of weight. All right. Yeah, you're very welcome. Glad I can help with that. Little pearly nuggets of wisdom. All right, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining me live today. If you have any additional questions, be sure to reach out to me at Whitney at Passive Investing, or excuse me, Passive Investing with Whitney.com. You can also reach out to me directly on my email, Whitney at Passive Investing. And you guys have the webinar registration page for our next event next week about building your apartment syndication team. Until next time, guys, take care.